We are Hildebert and Robin, and we'll tell you a bit about what we modeled over the last weeks, which focused on procrastination through behavioral and emotional regulation, with our subtitle, "Or Should We Just Do It Tomorrow?" So what we'll tell you about in our presentation is we'll give you first, of course, an introduction to the problem. We'll show you our model, coarse-grained version, of course, but yeah, we'll explain that. Then we'll show you that our implementation works, so we'll verify it. We'll show you an experiment on the stress sensitivity, what effect that has on procrastination. Then the stress control therapy, like how would therapy help us with procrastination, a short conclusion, and some limitations and some future research. So why did we actually decided to model procrastination? It's because it's a large-scale problem. I mean, probably a lot of you have encountered this problem. I know I have, but also 80 to 95% of the college students actually procrastinate. And it's not only limited to academic procrastination, also companies have about 2 hours lost per employee per day of an 8-hour workday. So that's about 25% of the time that's not used for working, but used for other stuff like social media. And that's not the only financial costs are not the only problem, but also mental and physical problems. It has been shown that procrastination can be linked to cardiovascular diseases, depression, so a lot of big problems as well that can originate from this problem. And recently it has also been shown by a large body of research that has been piling up that it's not only a problem of self-control, which people thought previously, but also has to do with emotional thresholds. So stuff like stress, but also fear of the result of what finishing a task would mean. So we pose a model with two regulatory systems. So both the emotional regulatory system as well as the behavioral self-regulatory system. And we try to model one single long-term task. So this could be a large project at work, but it could also be a course at the university. Yeah. We try to analyze the effect then of stress sensitivity and of stress control therapy, which our experiments will be based on. So let me give you an overview of our model. Here's the base layer of our model, and we can basically segregate it in 3 different parts. So we have the red box, which is the main line through our model, of which X1 is the importance of the task, X2 is the stimulus we get to work, which is a combination of the importance, but also of the amount of work we still have to do. And then we have X3, which is the central one, which stands for procrastination. X9 is the rate of the work being done. And then X10 is the amount of work done. So from beginning to end, X10 will go from 0 to 1, 1 being the work is finished. So we're almost at 1 for this semester. Then we have the 2 different regulatory loops. So on the top, we see in the green box, we see X4. X4 is self-control. So that is basically, yeah, what you influence, what you have influence on. And then we have on the bottom, we have the blue box, which contains all the emotional regulatory systems. So here, X6 is very important because that's the stress, which we'll focus the experiments on. But there are also nodes like stress control, shame from procrastination, but also procrastination-induced joy and general joy. All these nodes are retrieved from psychological research. So all these connections we made based on what psychological researcher gives us. And then we have X12. X12 is here a separate node because that is, stands for therapy. So this is what we actually try to see, okay, does it have an effect? Then we of course also try to make it adaptive. So we added 2 other layers, and these 2 other layers have effect on the connection between the stress and the stress control. So that's in the bottom left, where we model the connection weight, which is X13, and then we have X15 as the speed factor of that connection weight. And on the top right, we have X14, which is the connection between the work being done and the amount of self-control. Kind of related as well to the once I start, it's easier to continue principle. And the speed factor with which one learns from this past experience is also influenced by the emotions one experiences during the course. So this is why these 2 arrows here exist. All right. Of course, we also want to show you that our model is actually implemented correctly. So we looked at the stationary points of our model. We only looked at the ones with the scaled sum function. So that's why there's these 5 dots here and 2 dots here. So we took a look, and what we see is that we have a very, very slight difference basically between what our model yields and what the aggregated impact is. So yeah, there's a very good resemblance between these models. So we can say that our model was verified by this as well for the learning. So that's good.
So in terms of experiments, we first looked into stress sensitivity. For stress sensitivity in general, we took all the base matrices, put them as the average person, and then changed 2 of the nodes, initial speed and initial value and speed, speed factor, for which are anxiety and control state of anxiety. We determined an anxious person, an average person, which is the baseline one, and a confident person, tweaking those values. The goal here was to have work done at a similar time. So here are the results. Here you can see the 3 resulting graphs of these are the base layers. We didn't include the graphs of the other layers, as that would have been confusing. But as we can see with the table below, which is just the values in the graphs transcribed, the work is done at a very similar time, which is very good because it's what we wanted. Also, we can see that the more an individual is usually looking at stress, is sensitive to stress, the more sudden the shifts are. So in anxious, you can see the peak is very early on. It's also higher, but it's very early on and also has a quicker decrease following. Whereas the others, the more confident you are, the more smooth out your line for stresses. But this also applies to procrastination, which is the green line in the graph, which is a little lower, but also has a very similar behavior as stress. And we're happy with these results because they do match what we expect these 3 types of individuals to have as a behavior and a mental state throughout the process of the task. Then we went on to a second experiment, which is using these same 3 individuals, these 3 same values. We added therapy. So there was no therapy in the first experiment, and now we added it, trying to cure the stress. The goal here is to have a peak stress being the same on all 3 individuals and seeing how having an equal peak stress affects the rest of the behavior. We chose these 3 values for initial values of stress node. And yeah. And the results show these 3 graphs. Here we can see that indeed everyone peaked, has its stress peak at 0.7. And yeah, so that's nice because that's our goal. And you can see also that it did affect people differently. Mainly, well, the type of individual doesn't change, meaning that although the stress is lower, it affects, for example, the more anxious, the more you're affected by therapy because you need it in a way. And it actually means that the more anxious person now finishes way earlier than the rest, than the others. You can see this in the table, the values at the bottom. Also, so the more quickly the task is completed, but it also, the stress is affected, the procrastination is affected in a very similar way, although much lower amplitude of values. Yeah, next slide. So in conclusion, we're happy with our model because we're able to validate it with a really good overall result. We're also able to model different types of people. Here we show an experiment, but we actually have in our paper 2 other experiments that precede the experiment, where we test more the stress sensitivity itself and how it affects the whole model, and also therapy control themselves, for actually tweaking and making 3 different types of individuals, which you show here, and is our final experiment in our paper. We were able to use many different values, for stress sensitivity, and so that it affects stress, of course, but not only that, it also affects all other emotions, which you also expect. You expect someone more anxious to have more, say, sporadic behavior, being a more irrational, procrastinate more and stuff, and less rational decisions on the spot, especially when he just received the task. And also stress control therapy based on the different type of individual can be very beneficial. Of course, the more stressed you are, the more benefits you're going to get, because you can decrease that stress a lot more. But yeah, everyone can benefit from it. And that's the conclusion. In terms of limitations and what we could look into, for now we only have one type of therapy. It's a current constant therapy that starts at the beginning. We could have it actually start a little later and kick in once the stress has kicked in, which would theoretically make more sense in a way. So yeah, that's one of the limitations. We could also, instead of for the stress, vary the threshold of the stress node, instead of actually having the initial value and speed rate changed. And we could also include other nodes such as self-compassion, corresponding therapy. So yeah, that's the whole model. Thank you for listening.